Ever imagine a computer program not just understanding language, but like really getting its structure the way we do? That's what we're diving into today. How these GPT models, all the rage these days, learn the hidden grammar of
It
language.
really makes you rethink AI, you know,
Yeah,
going beyond just recognizing patterns to something much deeper.
exactly. We're not talking about your everyday grammar rules here.
No, not at all.
We're going deep with this research paper, Physics of Language Models.
Or
Part 1, Learning Hierarchical Language Structures.
it gets pretty technical, but we'll break it
Oh,
down.
absolutely. We'll make it make sense.
The researchers actually went and created their own languages for this study.
Wow, really? Their own languages?
Yeah, based on something called context-free grammars, CFGs for short.
Okay, so CFGs. Help me wrap my head around that.
Think of it like building with Legos, but instead of bricks, you have words.
Okay, I'm with you.
The CFG is like the instruction booklet, telling you how to put those words together to build, sentences, paragraphs, the whole shebang.
So it's like the rules of the language, right?
Yeah. But the researchers, they didn't use any ordinary instruction booklet. These synthetic CFGs they made create some seriously complex structures in the language. Like even if you had the rule book right there in front of you.
It'd still be tough to figure out.
Exactly. You'd need some serious mental gymnastics to figure out if a sentence is legit or not. You'd probably need to pull out your old computer science textbook and use something called dynamic programming.
Wow. Okay, so we're talking next level stuff here.
Definitely. And they actually show you one of these crazy sentences in the paper.
Yeah.
Figure 1, and let me tell you, it's a doozy.
Yeah.
This sentence goes on and on with twists and turns. You can barely follow what it's even trying to say.
So it would take a human a long time to figure that out.
Oh, yeah. A good while to analyze that sentence and decide if it follows the rules or not. But here's the kicker.
What's that?
GPT models, they can actually learn these ridiculously difficult CFGs.
No way, really.
And not just learn them, they can generate new sentences that follow all the rules perfectly.
So they're not just spitting out random words, they're creating sentences that make sense within this crazy complex system.
That's right. And they don't just make 1 or 2 sentences, they come up with all sorts of different sentences, all valid according to that crazy rule book.
That's pretty wild.
And there's more. They can even mimic the probability distribution of the original language.
Okay, now you're losing me. What does that even mean?
It means they're capturing how likely different sentences are to occur based on those rules. Like they're learning the style, the nuances of the language, not just the basic rules.
So it's like they're learning to speak the language fluently, not just stringing words together.
Exactly. And you know what really helps them do this? Something called rotary or relative attention.
Rotary or relative attention, that sounds technical.
It is a bit, but think of it this way. Imagine trying to understand a sentence in another language, something you've never seen before.
Okay, I can imagine that.
You wouldn't just look at each word on its own, right? You'd try to figure out how they relate to each other, what goes with what, the overall structure.
Right, you'd look for the connections.
Exactly. And these fancy attention mechanisms, that's what they're letting GPT models do.
So it's like they're paying attention to the context, not just the individual words themselves.
You got it. It's a huge step towards AI actually understanding language, not just mimicking it.
That's really impressive. But the researchers didn't just stop at seeing that GPT models could learn these CFGs, did they?
Oh no, they wanted to dig deeper.
They're like, all right, what's going on in that AI brain?
Exactly. They wanted to know how the models were doing it.
So how did they do that?
They use a technique called linear probing. Imagine having a tiny flashlight that can peek into the AI's thoughts.
Whoa, like mind reading.
Sort of. Linear probing lets researchers see how the AI is representing information internally.
So they're basically spying on the AI's thought process.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And what they found is incredible. The AI's internal memory, it actually encodes the hierarchical structure of the CFG.
Wait, so it's not just memorizing patterns, it's actually building a mental map of the grammar itself inside its own network.
Precisely.
That's amazing. So how does it do that? How does it actually build that map?
Well, it's surprisingly similar to this classic computer science concept called dynamic programming.
Dynamic programming. That sounds familiar.
It's like imagine planning a road trip with a bunch of stops along the way.
Gotcha.
You wouldn't try to figure out the entire route at once, would you?
No way, too complicated.
Right. You'd break it down into smaller chunks, figure out the best way to get from one stop to the next, and then put it all together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's a lot like what these GPT models seem to be doing with these complex CFGs. They're not trying to process the whole sentence at once.
So they're breaking it down.
Exactly. focusing on the boundaries between different parts of the sentence, like those stops on a road trip.
So it's like they're using dynamic programming to understand the sentence piece by piece, just like we might do when we're trying to figure out something complex.
Precisely. And the researchers could actually see this in the AI's attention patterns. It's like they were watching the AI work through the sentence step by step.
So it's not just randomly generating stuff, it's actually solving the problem, just like a human would.
That's right. And this connection to dynamic programming is fascinating because it means that GPT models might not just be learning surface-level patterns. They might be developing actual problem-solving strategies that are similar to what humans use,
It's like they're starting to think like us, at least when it comes to language.
which is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. But
Oh.
hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've been talking about these super complex synthetic languages. What about something more, you know, human?
Right, real world stuff.
Exactly. I mean, the way we actually talk and write is a lot messier than these perfectly structured CFG languages. We have slang, we have idioms, sarcasm, things that would make a grammar textbook explode.
That's a good point. So how do they bridge that gap?
That's where things get even more interesting, and that's what we'll explore next, with something called implicit CFGs. All right, so last time we dove deep into these super complex synthetic languages, remember? Based on those context-free grammars, the CFGs.
Yeah, and it was mind-blowing. GPT models actually learning those languages, even generating new sentences that fit all the crazy rules.
Right, and not just random sentences either, sentences that captured the style, the nuances of the original language.
It was like they were actually understanding the structure, the logic behind the language, not just mimicking it.
And when the researchers peeked inside the AI's brain, what did they find? They found it was encoding that hierarchical structure of the grammar.
Yeah, like it was building its own little mental map of the language inside its network. Pretty wild, huh? But remember, those were synthetic languages, made to be extra tough. What about, real world language, the way we talk every day?
That's the real test, isn't it? Human language. It's messy, it's unpredictable. We've got slang, idioms, sarcasm, things that would make a grammar textbook have a meltdown.
Exactly. So how does AI handle that?
Well, that's what the researchers wanted to know, and that's where this concept of implicit CFGs comes in. Remember those Lego instructions we talked about?
Yeah, the ones where the CFG is like the instruction booklet for building sentences.
Right, but now imagine each Lego brick represents a whole group of words, not just one.
Interesting. So like word categories, nouns, verbs, adjectives. Instead of put the blue brick next to the red brick, it's more like put the action word next to the thing word.
You got it. That's exactly what implicit CFGs are all about. It allows the model to learn even richer language structures because now it's not just about the order of individual words, but also about the relationships between these groups of words.
So it's like the AI is learning a more abstract, a higher level grammar.
Precisely. It's moving beyond just the surface level of individual words and starting to understand the underlying concepts, the categories that make up language.
That makes sense. But can GPT models actually handle this, these implicit CFGs?
That's the question, isn't it?
Huh.
And in result 10 of the paper, the researchers found that they can. GPT models can actually learn these implicit CFGs. They can figure out the hidden relationships between groups of words, just like they did with individual words in the simpler CFGs.
So they're not just memorizing patterns, they're actually figuring out these more complex relationships, the kind that really make up human language.
Exactly. There's another fascinating discovery they made. Remember those word embeddings we talked about? How the AI represents each word as a unique code?
Yeah, like a numerical representation of each word.
Right, so they found that the AI was actually encoding this group information directly into the word embeddings. It's like the AI is building its own little internal dictionary where words are organized not alphabetically, but by their grammatical function, by how they relate to other groups.
Hold on, so it's not just assigning a random number to cat and another to dog. It's more like saying cat belongs to this group of things and run belongs to this group of actions. And then the AI is figuring out how all these groups connect to each other.
You nailed it. It really shows that these GPT models are learning something much deeper than just the surface structure of language. They're starting to understand the underlying meaning, the relationships between concepts.
This is incredible. If AI can do this with made-up languages, what about real languages? With all their slang and idioms and complexities. Just imagine if we could teach AI to understand the full depth of human language.
It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? The possibilities are truly mind-boggling. Think about machine translation that doesn't just translate word for word, but captures the nuances, the poetry, even the humor of the original language. Or chatbots that can truly understand what you mean, not just what you say, and respond in a way that's helpful, appropriate, even empathetic.
It's like we're on the verge of this whole new era of communication where the line between human and machine starts to blur.
It's both exciting and a little bit unsettling, right? But before we get carried away with all the possibilities, there's still one big question we need to answer.
Yeah, the big so what? Why does all of this matter? What are the real-world implications of AI learning to understand human language at this level?
That's the question that's going to keep us up at night, and luckily that's what we're going to unpack in the final part of this episode. So stay tuned, because things are about to get really interesting.
We've been on quite the journey, haven't we? Exploring the fascinating world of GPT models and how they're learning to decode the secrets of human language.
It's like we've given them a crash course in linguistics, from basic grammar rules to those mind-bending implicit CFGs.
Right. We've seen them tackle complex synthetic languages, figure out how words are grouped into categories, even build their own internal dictionaries based on meaning and function.
It's clear these models are capable of some pretty amazing feats, things we never thought possible just a few years ago.
But now we come to the big question, so what? Why should we care about all this? What does it mean for the future?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've seen the potential, but how does it translate to the real world?
Exactly. What are the practical implications of AI learning to understand human language at this level?
Well, for a long time, we thought of AI as being good at pattern recognition. Feed it enough data, and it can predict what comes next. But this research suggests something much deeper is happening.
It's not just about mimicking, it's about understanding.
Exactly. GPT models are not just following rules. They're figuring out the logic behind the rules, the why behind the how.
They're learning to think like us, at least when it comes to language.
That's a great way to put it. And that has enormous implications for all sorts of fields. Think about machine translation. Imagine a world where AI translators can capture not just the literal meaning of words, but also those subtle shades of meaning conveyed by grammar, by word choice.
No more clunky translations that miss the point. We're talking about AI that can translate poetry, humor, even slang, and do it in a way that captures the soul of the original.
That's the dream, isn't it? And it's becoming more and more achievable as AI gets better at understanding the nuances of language. And it goes beyond just translation. Think about chatbots. Imagine chatbots that can actually understand your intent, not just your words, and respond in a way that's truly helpful, contextually appropriate, even empathetic.
Chatbots that actually get us, that can hold a real conversation, not just spit out pre-programmed responses. That would revolutionize the way we interact with technology.
It would blur the line between human and machine in a way we've never seen before. And it all comes back to AI's growing ability to learn and understand the hidden structures of language, the same structures that we as humans use to think and communicate.
It's like we're teaching AI to speak our language, not just in terms of vocabulary, but in terms of thought and meaning.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it raises a fascinating question. If AI can learn these incredibly complex synthetic languages that were designed to be extra challenging, what does that tell us about their potential to understand the infinitely more complex and nuanced world of human language? Could they one day even surpass our own abilities to analyze and interpret text?
That's a question that's both exciting and a little bit daunting. It's like we're opening a door to a future we can only glimpse, a future where the boundaries between human and machine become increasingly blurred.
It's a future full of possibilities, and it's a future that's being shaped right now with every advance in AI and language understanding. And that's why this research is so important. It's not just about abstract theories and technical jargon. It's about the very nature of language, of thought, of what it means to be human in a world increasingly intertwined with intelligent machines.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these ideas. We've gone from Legos to dynamic programming to the very essence of what makes us human.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those brains buzzing, keep asking questions, keep exploring, because the future of language, and perhaps even the future of thought itself, is being written right now.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of GPT models and hierarchical language structures. It's been a truly fascinating exploration. Until next time, keep those minds curious, and we'll see you back here for another deep dive.